They're coming in. Yeah, I got it. Kathy's recording. I got it.
That's my only job, is to hit that recording button. Oh, hi, Anik.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm catching you guys before I go into the museum today, so.
Okay, good.
I'm glad these are.
Oh, hey, I'm like, who's saying this? How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing
Good.
Amy, I love your sleeves.
Thank you. This is a designer. It's called So Small, SEW, small. And I really love what she's doing.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure you guys, can you guys see that this is avocado?
We can see it's kind of brownish.
It's like a brownish. Okay, so it is a color to you though, right?
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Oh, great,
Yes.
great. I just wanted to make sure that you all agreed it was a color.
What is it to you, Amy?
Oh, it's a beautiful avocado. It's like yeah. I just wanted to make sure that, I mean, sometimes people don't see colors that are like that.
Because they're so neutral.
Wise guy. You guys know.
Hey, look at the necklace that Amy is wearing, Marie. So nice.
Oh, it looks so beautiful.
Yes. Thanks to Marie for my necklace. We have a friendship necklace now, thanks to Hawaii. Wish you all had been in Hawaii with us because it was beautiful.
It was epic. Ooh.
Whoa.
All right.
You're planning on doing that workshop again next year, right? Or am I?
We're hoping to. Sasha's getting ready for another big trip, so we haven't been able to speak with her yet. But yeah, we're going to twist her arm a little bit.
Yeah, we'll do some editing. We did so much stuff. It was mind blowing how much stuff. Marie and I were talking like, what would you have taken out of it? I don't know, because everything was fun, but it was.
I would have just made it like a month long.
We needed to be a month long.
Yeah, it's definitely a 3-week program.
I didn't want to cut anything out at all. It was all so magical.
I know it was. Julia Rose is here.
Where?
Haven't seen Julia Rose in forever.
All right.
How Elaine's here from Costa. Sorry, guys. I'm just scrolling over your names. Looking.
Yeah, we haven't seen you for a while.
Peter's here.
All sorts of folks.
Yeah. Thanks to all of you that put your videos on, like Royal Dancer and Tammy Soprani, so we can see.
Oh yeah, Suzanne, they get ready. That's all I have to say.
Are you okay? Suzanne, are you ready? You're back from your trip and you're ready too.
I'm ready to go on my trip. Another one.
Oh,
yay!
Hey.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, well,
I'm ready. I'm ready to dance.
Good.
All right, well, limber up,
so
baby.
everybody put yourself on mute.
Put yourself on mute.
I'm going to let them in, and Amy, you can count us in.
Okay. Hold on. I still laugh at this. Sorry. Oh. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
And thank you everyone who was in the audience participation portion of this show. Welcome to Feedback Friday. It's episode number 119. And we are so pleased to have you join us today for another incredible presentation. And Feedback Friday, for those of you who are new, is our show from Botanical Colors where we talk to artists, activists, historians, scientists, people who work in all sorts of media, people who are running around and looking at the earth from different ways, plants, anything that has to do with our passion, which is natural dyes and color. I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors, and joining me from the Cape is Amy Dufault, our director of communications. We were just in Hawaii. It was amazing. We hope you can join us next time. It was pretty special. Today, we are so pleased to welcome María-Elena Pombo of Fragmentario. Continuing with our Earth Month series, María-Elena will focus on using materials that are the byproduct of the food industry to prevent them from going into landfill, but also as a strategy to promote non-extractivist and decolonial futures. This is going to be really incredible to hear what she has to say. Likewise, promoting the use of free materials, and finally, centering plants people have a connection with. María-Elena was born in Caracas and has lived in New York City since 2011. She works through open-ended research projects that are normally translated into installations, objects, sculptures, and videos. Before we get started with María-Elena, a few reminders. We have a printing class with Flora Obscura, Allison Kelly, that is in about a month right now. And it's just going to be amazing. She has beautiful, elegant technique. Got a few spots left. If you're interested, please sign up. We are also doing a collaboration with Julie Beeler of the Mushroom Color Atlas. And that workshop opens next week, and it's going to be an on-site forage and mushroom dyeing workshop in Trout Lake, which is on the border of Oregon and Washington out here. So very excited for that. And just to talk about the Eileen Fisher Renew Indigo collaboration project that we've been doing for a number of years, which is this thing here, linen overdyed with indigo. We are also offering, for those who want to do a DIY, you may purchase indigo bundles on our site for a discount. So take advantage of it if you've been wanting to start to do some indigo overdying. And just a little bit of housekeeping. Amy's moderating and monitoring the chat, and that's where you'll post your questions after the presentation today. Everybody's going to be muted for the presentation, but we'll open it up afterwards to say hello and goodbye. Call is being recorded, and we'll have that available for you later on. And now we can start with María-Elena. Welcome to Feedback Friday, and we're so pleased to have you.
Hi, well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you again, Kathy and Amy, for inviting me. And sorry, okay. Yeah, I'm spotlighted. Okay, it confused me to see me. I'm gonna start sharing screen. Okay, so this year actually marks 10 years since I have been working with natural dye, so it is like a nice moment to reflect a little bit. And I have some images that I'm going to share and some of my work. As Kathy said, we're gonna be centered primarily on food byproduct, but I'll speak about some other projects just to give a little bit of context. My work that people know the most is my work around avocado seeds. I have been working with avocado seeds that I collect from restaurants or sometimes from individuals for almost like 10 years now. And it goes really beyond natural dyes, but it came from there. So it kind of really gave me this vocabulary. And what you can see here is part of a project that started in 2018. I was collecting water from around the world that people gave me. And as you guys, most of you will know here, depending on the water, the color is different. But also this powder is avocado seeds that I had ground into a powder, and I'll explain a little bit better. We're gonna travel back in time, 2013. I had just graduated from Parsons School of Design. I studied fashion design there, and I was helping my partner on a project and it required organic cotton. There was not a lot of options for colors, and he didn't like the colors, and he proposed maybe we dye the fabrics ourselves. I didn't like the sound of this. I imagined that little bag with synthetic dyes, and I had done that as a child, and I didn't enjoy it really. And I was totally against it. And then to make everything worse, he said that he had read about the Amish, because he grew up in like rural New York, close to Pennsylvania, use walnut shells and onion skins to dye textiles. I didn't like the sound of this at all. I told him like, what are you even talking about? I'm not going to do that. Like our textiles are gonna smell. And I don't know why, but my reaction was really against it. But then on the subway going back home, I started to think that this was actually very interesting, and it would require a lot of experimentation, but also working with plants. And I apologized, and I started to learn about this with him together. So these are some of like our first experiments. I was joking with Kathy and Amy at the beginning that I feel like everyone that works with natural dyes has some photos like this from their start. So these ones were dyed with walnut shells. These ones were dyed with avocado seeds, which actually came a little bit later. And all these ones here were with onion skins. So the purple ones were, and these ones were like, no, these ones were with red onion, and then these ones were with yellow onion skins. And these ones were again with the walnuts, and these ones were with tea. All of this sample making we did in upstate New York, in the town where my husband is from, and the water there it has a lot of minerals, and normally when we go there, we don't like the taste of the water, but what that means is then that the colors come very vivid, because then we replicated these same samples again in New York City, and the colors were not so vibrant like this. And something I also have to say, especially in this context, is what we used here was cotton, so a cellulose fiber, which, as most of you guys will know here, it doesn't take the color so well as like protein fiber does. And we also didn't use a mordant. So we were very lucky that like our first experiments were done in this context where the water was high in minerals and gave us these amazing colors. These were our first ones, and then we started reading more and found that also avocado seeds could be used to dye textiles. And I think this is where it started to get more interesting for me. I am originally from Venezuela, and in my house in Venezuela, we had a tree. We had many trees, but we had an avocado tree, and it really was like almost like a character in like our family and like friend lore, because it gave so many avocados and they were so big that we had to give them to other people. So I would go get a haircut and I would bring avocados, and this house is not part of the family anymore. And it's we always talk about this house and the avocado tree when we meet. So for me to see like, okay, this plant that I had in my backyard had this possibility, and I never knew about these. What else did I ignore from like my surroundings growing up? As I started to read more about natural dyes, I started to find that a lot of the plants that were really important in terms of like their colors, but also historical, were actually from South America. And this, on like a more personal level, this allowed me to have like a different approximation to this territory that I grew up in, but I didn't live in anymore. And what does that mean? A lot of the times, like people will ask like, oh, how to describe it basically, or people will have an association of like an aesthetic of what South American art or South American design should look like. And I never really identify with this perception that there is in the United States or in Europe of the things that are coming from South America. And I think for me, working with natural dyes specifically from South America gave me a different way to explore this, because I am centering these plants that I grew up with, some that I knew about, some that I didn't, and whatever color comes from them is the color that comes from them, but at least these plants are from this territory. So I'm having here images of two of these plants, one a plant that I knew about and one a plant that I discovered through natural dyes. So this dress I did for a bride many years ago, I think it was like 2017. And I designed this dress for her, and I dyed the textiles with annatto seeds. Maybe some of you will know it as achiote. This is a plant that is used a lot in the food industry. So here in the United States, it's used for Velveeta cheese. If there's any Mexican people here or people who like Mexican food, for cochinita pibil, it's used. And we use it in Venezuela for like our Christmas dish, which is called hallaca. It's kind of like a tamal, but way more intense, and it's used to color the dough. If you have seen photos of indigenous people from the Amazon that have like orange around their body, this is what they use to dye their body. So it has like a dual purpose of like ritual, but also to protect themselves from like sunburn or from mosquito bites, this type of things. Also, like fast food, like Doritos equivalents, but from Venezuela, are dyed with this plant. And I was allergic as a child to this plant for a while. So whenever I would go to children's parties, I couldn't eat this fast food. So it was kind of like a plant again that when I discovered, okay, you can use it to dye textiles, like it was a plant that was part of like my imaginary in a sense. Another plant, and I'm choosing to center it here, it's quebracho, specifically quebracho red, quebracho rojo, and this is the color that comes out of it. And this is a plant that is from the south of South America, from like Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay area where they all meet. And up until really, I mean, this article is from like 1951, and you know, like the New York Times is taking the time to talk about the fact that Argentina is sending this plant to China and why. And it's like at this point, still natural dyes were kind of like relevant in like global economy. This plant gives such colors that it was almost eradicated, but then it didn't because then synthetic dyes took over. But I'm just showing you guys all this because it's kind of part of the reasons that I'm interested in natural dyes, that they allow us like a different approximation to history. And I think especially coming from the American continent at large, where like we kind of hit a reset button like 500 years ago, and sometimes we don't really know what happened. Like we need these other ways to understand history. And again, some other colors. Most of my work actually doesn't look like this, but precisely for that reason, I'm choosing to start here, just so you know, because then it's going to start all looking avocado seeds and onion skins. When I first discovered this, like 10 years ago, or learned about it, I had never heard about this before, like natural dyes, and like I spoke with people and no one knew about this, especially Venezuelans, and something came to me that I was like, I really need to share this with the world. And there was some sort of like naivete in there, and it had good intentions, but of course, as you guys all know, like many people do know about this, and like many people do have continued these traditions, and for example, like in Mexico and in Peru, but also like in India and in the United States, like these things have been kept through generations. In my own context in Venezuela, it wasn't. So the way that I really wanted to engage with this at first was like doing workshops. And I'm showing here some photos of like my first workshop. And again, centering plants that had a meaning for people. This happened in the south of Italy in the context of a film festival. I went to a film festival when I first was like 2016. So that was like 3 years after I first learned about natural dyes. I was working as a fashion designer full time. So all of these explorations were on the weekend, whenever I had free time. I didn't expect for this to become my job. So I went to this film festival and people were very excited about like their onion. Like you would go to people's house and they would tell you like, oh, try this onion that is from my garden or like my father's garden. And you should eat it like an apple. It's super sweet. And at the end of the festival, I told the organizers, like, it would be interesting if we do a workshop next year where I teach people how to dye with the onion skins, because it was a plant that I was like using. And film festivals, they always have workshops or events that are not related to film. Filmmakers have to have other inspirations outside of film. So in the first year that I attended, they had some like folk stands, workshops, or other type of things. So they loved the idea. And in my mind, I would just go again. I would pay for this trip, with like take a vacation. And they were like, no, put together a proposal so we can use it to get a grant, so we can pay for you to come. And so I learned about like grants or like residencies and this type of things just through this. And a year later, I came back and I would go to like a lot of like the supermarkets to get like onion skins, and like people had been saving some throughout the year. And I was very shy at first to do this. Like I remember going to the counter, like I can pay for this, but it's just onion skins, you know, and I don't even speak Italian. And then the people were like, no, don't worry, that's just the trash. Thank you for cleaning it. the day of the workshop, like we had material for like 20 people, but like more like 30 people came, and person after person kept coming saying like, I am a fan of the tropea onion, the onion specifically from that place. So I wanted to see what else she could do. So like a very personalizing a plant, which I think it's always a very important part of my work. I kept coming to this place, and I'll show you some more photos, but we're gonna skip a little bit to another work, because then when I share these photos on social media, then people started asking me like, oh, would you also do workshops here in New York, or can we commission you some work? And I also didn't know this could happen. I was not expecting for this to happen because again, I had a full-time job. But first I got a smaller commission and then larger. And this is kind of really the only client work that I will show you guys. This was like my first really large client. And I was very lucky because they were hammocks. So I was charging by the gram. These are quite heavy. So this really allowed me to work at a large scale, to learn how to work at a large scale, how you have to organize your materials. And most of these things here are not actually food byproducts. There was one color that I did for them that was with avocado seeds and iron, but it's not here. But I wanted to show it because just not many people know about like this other aspect of my work. And even though I will talk mostly about like food byproducts, there are other plants, and like I think it's just a matter of like how are you going to go about it like responsibly. And I think all of these ones were sourced from botanical colors. So this one that I'm holding here is from Osage Orange. These two are from annatto seeds. So actually, these are not, the annatto is not from botanical colors. Then indigo. And I did this maybe for like 3 years working with clients. I think as I started to grow, it was more difficult to control the narrative. At first, it was smaller companies, so they were very on board with centering the plants. So when this company talked about like their products, they would literally say, this is the mother hammock, this is the Osage hammock. I found that later, as I started to get larger clients, they didn't want to do this because they were afraid that they would be copied, or they wanted to approach it a little bit like Aesop, that is like a blend of like plants or something like this. But at the beginning, these were the clients. So this was my kind of like researcher / artisan era, because I was dying all the things myself. I was very strong. I don't think I could do this now. This was a lot of physical work. And it was a very artisanal level. Towards the end, I started to get clients in which we had to do kind of more tests to see if these colors were actually, were okay for like the wear that is needed, the washing, the person's sweat, exposure to the sun, this type of things. And this is like for most people, this is quite boring. For me, this is super interesting, but I'm just showing this because there's a lot of controversies around like certain plants are good or not. How do we know it? Should we put it? How can we see if these plants work? And my take is that there is a context in which this matters, and there is a context in which maybe this matters less. But if in the context that this does matter, it's not something that anyone is going to be doing in their studio anywhere. You have to go to a scientific laboratory and they'll do it, and this is how it would look like. So we can move forward. So I went for the first time to this festival in the south of Italy, and this town is in the south of Italy where there has been a lot of refugees coming in the past like 8 years or so. So the first year that I did the workshop, some of the people who came were the filmmakers or Italian families that had been there forever, but also a lot of like this new refugee population. In this first opportunity, I met a guy called Henry from Nigeria, and he was working in Nigeria as a fashion designer. But then once he moved to Italy, he couldn't really work in like a regular way. He started then to like make dresses for people and sell in the market, but then he did what a lot of refugees end up doing all across the world, really, which is working in farms. Like I think everywhere in the world, like I have been in farms in the United States, in Italy, in many different places, and it's always immigrant population. So he ended up working like in the onion fields, and he was making dresses, and the access that he had for colors was quite limited because this is it's not like Milan, it's like a very small town. So he started to play with the onion skin to dye textiles to create like dresses to sell in the market. So the people from the film festival, we were speaking and they were like, why don't you come again? And you can do something a little bit different if you want. And maybe you do it with Henry. You guys have kept talking and they also were working on projects with him. And I thought that was amazing because I also already had like a ongoing relationship communicating with this guy. So we did this. So this is like the poster from that other second workshop that we did. And in this case, we dyed some textiles and we also did some like intervention in the park. There are not many photos of us together because I think we were just like working. We were not mindful of like taking photos of each other and the people. There's a lot of activities, but he's over here. I am taking the photos, and these are some of the participants that day. And these two are just two kids that have been living forever in this little town in Italy. And these two other guys, they had just arrived like that year from Africa, and they also were working in the onion fields. So again, it's like they are coming from like very different realities, but they both have, well, 4 of them have this relationship with the onion. So it's like we were creating like this space together where we're talking about that, and it's like we're all together. This was another workshop in the same place that I did in 2019. And it was again kind of like the same situation, but just like at a larger scale. And I didn't include photos here, but for this last activity we did together in 2019, I also brought the work of 4 students at Parsons. I have been teaching there for since like 2018, 19. In like a experimental design studio. So I had like 4 students that had done work around onion skins, and we show it there. And this was a very interesting project because we also were able to get funding from the United States Onion Association, which was like such an interesting partnership, because then they invited me to go to like their yearly onion gathering to speak about my work. And it was interesting because they were like, well, you'll come and you'll speak to like our members, which are all male, and then you'll do a workshop for their wives. And I was like, well, I don't know, just the wives will come. And I was like, by the way, I need an assistant to help me, which was my husband, who's like a white guy. And me and my husband were talking like, this is going to be so interesting for them because they're assuming that the workshop is for the wives and you're coming and I am your assistant in this context. And what ended up happening is that the men also, of course, came to the workshop. They were at first a little bit scared, like, and one just came and was like, are you some sort of tree hugger? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, what do you want from us? And I'm like, I don't want anything from you guys. You already paid me. I'm just teaching you, you can do this. And I even told them like, maybe you can sell your onion skins if you want, or you can have workshops in your farm, invite communities. And if you are going to sell the onion skins, you have to partner with people like me, not me necessarily, but I told them like a couple of names of people, because you have to create the desire, and you need these other people. Like they're not just gonna put it in a container and say, hey guys, buy this. These are photos from some farms. The one here that's kind of not so pretty is from a farm in upstate New York in the Black Dirt region. Amy, I just realized I wrote for this website that you had years ago, a blog post about this experience. So when I was working a lot with onion skins, I was getting them from supermarkets. And at a certain point, I started to think maybe I can just talk to a farm. And I started to email a bunch of farms in New York State, and then one finally responded. And then through this, I learned that there's this like Black Dirt region area. I think there used to be like a glacier there that melted. So the dirt is amazing, especially for onions. So I had still like a very naive imagination of like a farm and seasons. And I think I went here like in May or June. I think it was like June. So I asked the guy, like, are you going to have really a lot? Because I don't even have a car for me to figure out how to go there. And I ended up filling like 10 trash bags like this. And it was more like it looked like this. It wasn't this, but it looked kind of like this, but not so organized. And at the end that I had like my 10 trash bags and like the workers helped me and like most of them were Mexican. I asked them like, can you show me where the onions are coming out? And they looked at me like, what are you even saying? Like, it's like June, this is going to happen in September. And for me, it was a little bit like, well, I grew up in the tropics, we don't have seasons. So sometimes I forget about this. And then also I live in New York where we have everything accessible all the time. So it was kind of interesting to then even learn, okay, but what are these onions that you are packaging here? And some of the onion growers, they'll have like different plants, but in their case, they already had the relationship with the supermarket. So what they do is like they import onions from like Arizona. So I had these onions from Arizona, which again was like another thing to learn, because depending on the soil where the plants grow, and like there's a lot of dyers that work around this idea of the terroir, right? Like the soil where the plant is growing and how it will affect the color. And what I had read is that the drier the soil is, the more intense the color will be. So I was a little bit disappointed at first, but then I thought, well, this is maybe better. I ended up getting some beautiful colors from these onion skins. And then this one is from one of the facilities in Italy, in the south. I have visited many farms, onion farms in the south of Italy, because I have this ongoing collaboration with the film festival there. Here in New York, I have only visited this one. And something that is interesting, especially like in the ones in Italy, is that there's like different migrant populations. So just very organically, like they start to separate, and it's not that they don't like each other. It's just like a language thing. So like on this last trip, like you would see like tables with like Indian migrants, and another tables with like migrants from Bulgaria, and another ones from Africa, and then some others ones with Italian. So in my case, like something that is also interesting for me of working with these food byproducts is that then I also get to know these worlds and learn from them. I started doing like a short film about like this whole onion trade in the south of Italy, and it's kind of like an ongoing project that, let's see when it ends up coming out. Now we start to go to the avocado seeds. So first with avocado seeds, I would just save my own. I don't really eat a lot of avocados here, so it would really take a really long time. And then I started to email restaurants, and of course you can't email them, you have to go in person, but I was quite shy about it. And then finally one friend was like, you have to just do it. And then she was thinking in a place that this restaurant, and she spoke to the people there, and they were like, yes, of course, it sounds amazing. So I ended up then having this relationship, and there's been a lot of like trial and error of like what works, what doesn't, because something like onion skins, they're dry and you can just go to like a farm or like a processing facility. But with the avocado seeds, it's a little bit more complicated, because they do have still the meat of the avocado. So it's a little bit like different, but I have worked with many different restaurants here in New York City. Some really big that give me 300 avocado seeds like every 2 days, and then some smallers. And this guy, his name is Cornelio. He works in a deli nearby my studio, and he's been giving me avocado seeds now since 2018. So for like a really long time. This is what it looks like, what he gives me every week. So it's not really a lot, but it's enough, you know. And yeah, so these are just photos from like a weekly gathering of the avocados. I found, and I'm kind of jumping a little bit here, this is not something that like I invented or anything. Like for me, it's just work, but I wanted to show these images because it's basically what I am doing. So these images are from World War I era, and I don't understand exactly the chemistry, but it was something like some toxic gas was being used by the Germans. And then in the United States, they found that you could have some sort of thing done with peach stones to prevent the soldiers from dying. So there were like all these campaigns to save the peach stones to use it. And in Venezuela, you see something like this happening, but there's not a campaign. It just kind of happens that there's like coconut cemeteries, or like ocean shell cemeteries, and it's just like these dunes that are in like different regions across the country that people are just like, well, we'll just put them all here, and this will can use as fertilizer, something like that. The first work that I was doing with with avocado seeds was looking something like this, because I had worked as a fashion designer. I was making garments with this. These were not garments that I ever was planning to make like a full online, and precisely because I worked in the fashion industry, I knew that this was not necessarily compatible. And even honestly, like most of my clients I have had are from interior design. I have had very few clients from the fashion industry. I think in my own experience, when fashion companies have approached me to do some sort of work, it's always with very impossible timelines and very impossible. Yeah, it's always like, can you have this for like next week, which is a lot of like how things in fashion work, and it's not really compatible. But I thought it would be a good way to kind of manifest it into something like this research and this gathering that I was doing. So this was from a collection in which I was using avocado seeds, but also water from different areas around the world. I had started this project to map the ongoing Venezuelan diaspora. At this point, like a quarter of the population has left, like in the last 10 years, and people are like in different places around the world. And I was trying to use this as an approximation to say, okay, this is made with water that a friend that is now living in Mexico, she sent me, and this is what it looks like. And this is the water that I have here in New York City. And my parents were in Paris and they had sent me this water, and so on. So here are some of the studies. So this is water from Bogota, this is water from Paris, this is from San Luis Potosí in Mexico, and then New York City. This is water from Maine, and then the Dead Sea, which someone just gave me. And again, more photos from these performance that I did in a space some years ago. They were doing a year-long project around water, and some more of these photos. This same project, I was later invited to show it in Japan in a cultural space where they invite artists to do installation art. And at first they wanted us to replicate this like performance, and I was like, well, you have to help me. And then we couldn't really figure out how to do this, like translate that like across the world. And we ended up with this solution of just like, I would take over the cultural center, which exists in a former rice cracker factory. And I had never done this type of work before. Like, I was used to dressing people, not like objects. But this was an interesting moment for me that I started to think, okay, I don't have to dress a person. I can have these textiles and use them to dress like a space or a person. And these are some photos of that. Like, I took the same fabrics that I had like used here and just used them there to like dress this space. And this kind of then allowed me to have a different relationship with these textiles that I was using. Like, how can I make them even more accessible for people? So during the pandemic, I was working on an exhibition that was going to happen in London in a historical building. And I was feeling kind of very claustrophobic with a lot of restrictions we had to have. And I just really wanted to do something in my neighborhood. And I wanted to do something for Textile Month, which I always like participated in. And I always walked around, like there's a lot of factories nearby where I live and nearby my studio. And I always thought that it could be interesting to kind of like invade them or do something with them. And then finally, this was a moment in which it made sense. I came a day to this factory and to try to speak to like one of the workers to see if we could do something there. And I was super lucky that the one worker who came out, he's Puerto Rican. And I started to tell him, like, I do this work with avocado seeds, and this is how it looks like. And I was like, do you think maybe you can help me talk to the owner to see if I can get permission? And I was just explaining, and he immediately was like, yes, of course, I'll talk to them. And like, I want to help you. And I was like, okay, I don't really have much of a budget, but maybe I can pay you to come one day. And he's like, no, I don't want you to pay me. I just want to do this, because it turns out that this guy was part of a salsa troupe as their dancer, but of course they couldn't perform during COVID. So he was like, what I will do with you, which is the same that I do with my salsa troupe, because it's like I'm in my salsa troupe to connect with the Caribbean, and with you, I'll be working with avocado seeds, so it's the same. And for me, it was interesting because a lot of the times I have to be very explicit about the fact that I'm working with this plant and what does that mean. And I just spoke like 5 minutes to this guy that I thought was having a very different life to me, and like he just like got it immediately. So this was the result, and this was like a party that I did to inaugurate it in September 2020. So that's why some of us were wearing masks. And something interesting that happened across the street from the concrete factory, there's a car repair shop, and a lot of the workers there are Dominican. The owners are from Peru. So I kept going back there to ask them for a ladder to come here and like, do this. And they were like, what are you doing? And I told them, and they were like, can you do something here as well? And I was like, well, I don't really know. You don't have a structure like this for me to invade, but like I wanted to have a TV showing the making of this. And so they were like, I saw they had this like electricity cable hanging around, and I was like, can we use it? And then we put a TV there. So it's like you're both integrated. And they were like, yes, of course, perfect. So that's what's happening here. We had this TV that people could then come back and forth. And this is Cornelio, again, my longest avocado seed provider. And it was, for me, really nice that I could do this event, and he could come, and he was there also with his wife and some of his friends from his church. I did have a different realization later, because I was like, I should invite him to something more dignified, not to a concrete place that's super dusty. Like, I don't mind, but if he's gonna dress up, I want to invite him to a better place. But well, here are some photos of the close-ups, which normally I don't share, but I think here, of course, people want to see them. So the difference in the colors is because of the water. In this case, I'm not using real water from the world, but I'm making my own like synthetic waters of the world by adding things to make it more acidic, more basic, and adding iron as well. These are photos of the making of. So here is Luis, the Puerto Rican worker who was helping me, and this is Easy, who was my intern at the time. And yeah, just like slowly putting it together. This was there for like 9 months, and then I was very afraid at first that someone would like graffiti these or like steal the fabrics or whatever, but I had accepted like maybe this happens and that's fine, but nothing ever happened. The guys actually were taking care of it. Sometimes the fabric started to sag and they would tie them, but then there was a week that I realized that they were not taking care of it anymore. They didn't like it anymore. So then I just like took it down. And this is a little bit how it was looking like. I reused later these fabrics for some other work. And I mean, this is all silk. I work only really with silk because protein fibers take the color better. I buy them from providers. It's that stock silk that I buy from people that buy it from fashion designers that don't want to use them anymore. And I made some pieces with these. These were shown at like Mana Contemporary in New Jersey. So again, Cornelio gave me these seeds. I asked him not to stay for 2 months that I was away, but he still stayed because he liked the ritual of it. So I decided to just, these one seeds that he gave me to show them in the space. And I finally showed these pieces again last year in another art show in Italy. And thanks to this, now I'm going this year to work on a project with chestnut shells there. These are photos from some other similar installation that I did, but this one was indoors. In this case, I created some structures, but also had some fountains of avocado seeds, but changing again the water, and people could interact with them. And then they would get different colors so they could kind of understand how I make my own things, which is a little bit more experimenting with a workshop, but that it's not exactly a workshop. And I'll just finish here. So I showed you guys at the beginning some powder with the avocado seed, and my work has now kind of, I'm also doing these other things now that I'm making kind of like a clay with this powder, and this is kind of like what it's looking like. I was always kind of concerned, like, what can I do with this avocado seeds afterwards, right? Because I am taking them from the trash, but and I'm boiling them, but what can I do with them? And this is some experimentation that I have been doing now recently. So, but it all started from textiles. I think I'm gonna stop share now and just finish here. In case people have questions or comments.
And María-Elena, thank you. Amy will be liking those for you, so you don't have to actually be like monitoring chat while the questions come in. I have to say, I really loved your idea of how you kept bringing in community and meeting them at every level and recognizing, oh, this guy's a dancer, so he'll dance with this work that I'm doing. It's just, that was really touching to me. I love that part. So thank you for that.
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, María-Elena. There's no questions actually right now because I just realized I didn't open it up fast enough. I was looking at what you're doing, and but maybe just to sort of prime the conversation up a little bit. So some things that I wrote down while you were talking that I thought was really interesting as you're traveling around and you're going to different places and teaching people how to use what they have in front of them, like avocado pits or onion skins, that you can get color from things that people consider waste. I wrote down democratizing color, which I felt like you're sort of democratizing color as you go for people who maybe don't have the money to purchase color too. I think that's really interesting. But maybe you can talk about that, because one of the things you and I were talking about when we did our run through this past week is that there's definitely conversations around access to color, what is color, and also when you showed your test there, like the work that you've done has been tested for different light fast or wash fast. But maybe, so I guess I'm going to come around to why don't you talk about how you see this idea of democratizing color so everyone has access to it, and why that's totally okay for people to use waste and not just extracts from botanical colors.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like entry points, right? And if you are curious about these, like for me, I was curious and I just went and I got the onion skins of the first samples that I show you guys. And then as I started to get more interested, and especially as I started to do client work, I then went to the extracts, because you want to make things responsibly, right? That will not wash away. But for me, like I don't know if it is because like I'm from Venezuela, and like most of like our art is like public art that happened really during the 60s, and there was really this utopia of like democracy, and I'm used to things that are being very accessible. Like all of like our museums are free, and I always want things to be accessible at different levels. Like I want grandmothers that are not going to be, using money for them to be able to do it, or guys that maybe are going to be afraid of like investing money in these. For me, this is very important that like people can access it in like different levels, and if they then want to go into the extract, they can, but to discover that there's all these like possibilities, that you don't have to go and buy these things, and it's expensive sometimes to like make art, to be creative, even to like to do sports. And for me, it's a little bit like hacking it, like, okay, you can do it this other way. And a lot of the way that I grew up as well in Venezuela was like we're reusing a lot of like resources. We never thought that it was a sustainable thing. It was just like, let's not spend a lot of money. There was even a time that I wanted a tambourine and my parents wouldn't buy it for me. They were like, you have to ask people to save the glass bottles of soda, the thing on top, and then we'll make it afterwards. So this took months, and I was so annoyed at first, but then at the end it ended up being better than anything we could have bought, because we were saving it with time, and people were involved, and people were asking me how the tambourine came out. And there's something there about democratizing, but also like meeting other people. And I am quite a shy person that I'm just like, if I would just be alone for the rest of my time, like I think it would be okay. But this like forces me to go out, which I think then it's healthy. That then I'm going out, meeting other people. They also are getting to know this work. And I think especially in a city like New York, museums are quite expensive and quite inaccessible. And it took a lot of convincing, for example, to Cornelio to make him believe that he could go to these places. Like I kept inviting him to shows and he never would come. And then finally the Concrete Factory, he came because he knew 100% it's free because it's outside. And then he met the people with his family and he's like, okay, these people are not scary. They actually want to get to know me. And then afterwards he came to like Mana or whatever. But there is something there in the terms of like people can do it, but also people can understand what this is. Because for example, quebracho, I love all the stories around quebracho, but it's a plant that I have never seen in real life. I never knew about it. So it's going to be harder to have this connection than versus a plant that you do know that it exists.
Yeah. Okay, looks like we got a bunch of questions that came in. So I'm just, some will make it's no rhyme or reason. I'm just going to go in order. So somebody's asking if there are pesticides at all in the onion skins or avocado, if there's pesticides in the onion skins or avocados that you're using, and if they do they affect the colors?
I mean, I would imagine so, because I get the trash, right? So I can't be super selective. Like I would be more selective with the extracts. But I think there was a while that the Bushwick Food Cooperative were saving the onion skins for me, but they burned down. So those onion skins, they were organic, no pesticides, but all the onions skins that I have ever used, I'm pretty sure they have pesticides.
Mhm.
And there was one restaurant, Cosme, which is a super expensive Mexican restaurant here in the city. They were giving me avocado seeds for a while. They would use organic avocado seeds, but they would be my only provider. So this is a test that I haven't done, but that I think the person who asked, maybe they can do it. Like I think it would be an interesting thing to explore, because I am sure there would be some sort of difference.
And those are the same onions that we are eating, and then we never ask about if there's poisons on them as we eat them, which is always interesting. This kind of we forget about that, but
yeah.
Okay, can you talk about how you grind up the avocado seeds? Do you have a machine or do this by hand? And also, do you find colors change when the seeds are ground versus used whole?
So I use a Vitamix, as if I was like making flour. And I don't use the ground avocado seeds to dye. I tested it and it was not that good. Like I needed more. So I started to grind them because I had so many for storing. And like I had done that with the onion skins, and with the onion skins, it worked. Those 10 trash bags, I was able to convert into 2 Home Depot painter buckets. With the avocado seeds, I tried to do it and it didn't quite work for the dyeing, but then I had it. So I started to use it to kind of create landscapes. And then I just thought, okay, this looks like sand. Can it act like sand? And then I started to make like a clay. And with this clay, I made bricks and all sorts of things. And someone asked also how sturdy they are. They are not, I mean, if you throw them, they'll break. I don't fire them. They are air dried. But again, like I'm quite transparent, sharing a lot of like my process. And I think this is one of the things that if people want to then find their own ways to do it and you want to fire it, I think there's potential there to explore.
So you answered that next question about the sturdiness, but okay, here's one. When you create clothing, do you dye them before or after? Do you dye before or after the garments are sewn?
So I do both, and maybe I'll put like I'll put a photo to point out. Are you guys seeing this presentation?
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay. So for example, this pant, I dyed it after I made the garment, and this pant also. But then this one and this one, I dyed before these 3 because I also pleated them. So I dyed them, I pleated them, and then I sewed them. This dress, I sewed it and then I dyed it. So it really depends on like what I'm trying to achieve.
Mhm.
It depends basically.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Anne is asking, I have had trouble with light fastness when dyeing with onion skins on cotton. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, so I think it would depend on what you are doing. Like I would never advise, for example, onion skins for something that you will wear a lot. And like my concern, and I should have included a photo, I just realized now, because onion skins react a lot also to like the sweat of a person. So I've had a situation like, and Amy, that something similar happened to you, I think, with the cacao husk, but people bring in shirts to onion skins dye workshops, and then all like the armpit area and like different
Oh.
levels of like sweat become like a different color.
Mhm.
I don't know, like my advice also would be, I really advise people to not dye so much on cotton. That's why there's different things to consider, right? And again, I'll go because there's the mordant. So to achieve long lasting color, things that you can do, maybe use a mordant, use a lot of material to dye for a long time, and also use textiles and plants that are good, that are going to be long lasting. So for me, I don't use a mordant. When I have developed recipes for other people, that one that I show you, the graphs and everything, we did do some tests because that was going to be large scale. But for the things that I am doing, I don't mordant the textiles. I wash them beforehand, and I wash them really well, and I dye them over like a 3-day period, sometimes more. I use a lot of material, and I spoke a lot about this previously with Amy, that maybe that also itself is not sustainable. If I'm using the avocados, it's fine, sure. But when I was dyeing those hammocks that I showed you at the beginning, I was using 100% weight of fabric. So if the hammocks were 2 kilos, I was using 2 kilos of madder to achieve really intense colors. And these things would be, I was like marinating them for like 3 to 5 days. So I had just big containers that I was like moving around. Those were cotton. So like for my own work, the way that I find that the colors can be long lasting is I use silk. Avocado seeds for me are quite trustworthy colors. The colors are not so impressive at first, but they don't change very much. Annatto seeds, for example, I found that they're super impressive at first, but they fade quite a bit. So I think there's different ways that you can go to make it more long lasting, and explore why does it matter, does it not. If you're doing production for a company, of course it does.
Yeah, most people aren't doing production for companies. So, but you know,
Yeah.
I understand people wanting to have something that they put a lot of time and effort into come out looking really well and not morph into some new color. But that's oftentimes, that can be really exciting too, to see how that color does change. Let's see. I think you kind of talked about, somebody's asking about how do you clean the pits and do you remove the seed skin? You talked a little bit about.
Yeah. So I remove it, but it's more my own like mania. When like I'm washing them, I start to do it, or sometimes then I don't, and then it comes off on its own. But I have dyed using the seed skin before, and I have even used seeds that I had that got black and hard, that supposedly don't have color, but they still do. I don't use, for example, skins, because then those ones are harder to clean, and they are harder for the restaurants to store them. So no one asked that, but normally people ask me. And someone asked about other types of food waste. So yes, like I thought I included a photo, but I guess I didn't. I mentioned it. I'm doing a project this year in the north of Italy with chestnut shells. So these people saw my work last year in this show that I was part of, and then they invited me. They wanted to do something similar with avocado seeds, and I told them, no, I don't think it makes sense, because you guys don't need a lot of avocados. Like, how are we gonna have them? You know, we started to look at the restaurants in the area, and we started to talk about different plants that we could use. walnut shells as well. We're not going to use that in this case. We're going to use chestnut shells because it's in this region, the chestnuts were super important, and now they eat a lot of corn flour like polenta, but before they would eat a lot of chestnut flour. So still now, like what we're doing is that since last year, when the fall started, people in the town, it's a very small town, like 500 people, they have been saving their chestnut shells for me. But then also there's like a chestnut flour factory that is saving their shells for me. So when I get there in the summer, they're gonna give me all these chestnut shells. So chestnut shells, walnut shells, avocado seeds, onion skins, well, pomegranate rinds. Which this is, I'm a very honest person. Okay, so if I'm saying it's because it's true, botanical colors sells it in the powder. That's more efficient. I did it myself once trying to save them, and my grandmothers were here, they helped me and they were happy, but I felt so after because it's a lot of work. Well, and you guys just use cacao husks, right, in Hawaii?
Yeah, that was it was interesting. We were kind of all in the cacao pod compost. The people who gave us a tour at the chocolate farm said they'd never seen so many people get excited at once about a compost area with cacao pods. They were so beautiful, and all of us were coming up in these little buses and going, "Oh my God!" They were like, "What? They're getting a little overly excited about old cacao pods, but we did get two very exciting, well, very just beautiful colors from them.
Yeah, I want to just, these are some of the colors with the chestnut shells.
Oh, wow, pretty. Oh yeah,
So
somebody was just asking about that.
Yeah, so someone, they said looking forward to see it. So I thought, okay, I'll include it really quickly.
Yeah.
They're similar to the avocado seed color, which I think also sometimes I've found it with client work. A lot of the times different plants give the same color, and I've been in these situations that then it's like, okay, what color do we choose? And I always tell them, like, there's different ways to go about it. Like, are you gonna try to push forward like using food waste or price or storytelling? There was this one case that they were trying to figure out between like pomegranate rinds and like henna, and this one person really wanted pomegranate because then it's like food waste. The other person wanted henna because of the storytelling, and then someone else was like, what's the cheapest? And that's it. In this case, the chestnuts and the avocado seeds, I think they're very similar colors, but there's different reasons why I'm exploring them in different contexts.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, and it's been really interesting to see how sophisticated you can make. You've been able to design clothing and make them look so sophisticated and beautiful with a lot of the waste that you are creating, and that just has become part of your practice as a designer. I love seeing that. There's definitely people who have mentioned in the chat too that they've been following you for a long time and how inspirational you've been for them, and that it's been nice to hear you tell your story a little bit here too.
Yeah, really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so
right.
we're gonna let everyone unmute and say hello.
Yeah, say hello and goodbye and thank you, or clap if you want to clap, whatever you want to do. I'm going to clap.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Kathy and Amy.
Wow, so nice.
I went looking for that blog post that you talked about, and it must have been in the early days when we weren't tagging things properly. So I'll have to dig that up.
It wasn't for botanical colors. It was for the Food and Fire project, something like this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like prehistory.
Right. You know, all these entrepreneurial things that one does, like, oh yeah, right, the Food and Fibers project. Yes, of course. Yeah. We've got to bring that back to life.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, Amy and Kathy, and thank you everyone for coming. This was a lot of fun, and hoping to see everyone again in the future.
Yes, have a wonderful time this next season in your travels and your experiments. We're anxious to see what you come up with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
And avocado is a color.
Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
You want to stop the recording, Kathy?
Oh, sure. Let me do that. Thank you.